Okay, so as I was saying, so law is based on the values held by its creators. Based on the values of the creators, that is how the law is. So we see very clearly, Mr. Well, I can't get anything right today. Yes. So we see very clearly that although similar societies can share similar values, but not exactly the same values, so the law is kind of different. So we take, for example, the law between the United States and Europe. Right? The United States and Europe, they both believe in liberty, freedom, and rights, but it's not the same in the United States and Europe. For example, we believe in the United States in individual freedom. We're very big in individual freedom. Everyone can do kind of whatever you want. You get to that in a second. Yes, controlled anarchy. In Europe, they believe in society. It's the rights of the society. So, for example, Europe, social health care, the societal entitlements is a lot greater in Europe than it is over here. But for example, in Europe, and Cyril's from Argentina, they told people lock down for COVID, and society went along with that. In the United States, the whole idea was you can't tell me what to do, because that's just the values that we have. So in our Constitution, free speech, even hate speech, is protected. As long as you're not inciting violence, hate speech is protected. You can say terrible things about people, as long as you're not saying to harm them. Right. But in Europe, hate speech is a lot more legislated, even if it's not incitement to violence. So, for example, let's take Germany, for example. You can't speak about Nazism. There are laws against that. But in the United States, you can say whatever you want. But on the other hand, over here in the United States, we're very careful about the separation between. Germany, they don't. World War II. They do, to the extent of you're not allowed to speak about. You're not allowed to speak about Nazis. Not speak about it, meaning not allowed to. You can speak about what happened, but you can't. Preach the philosophy. Thank you. Yes, yeah. Another thing, like in the United States, church and state, separate. You can't fund religious institutions. Yeah, we're talking about what's supposed to be. I forget what it is, right? And for example, in many European countries, I think in England, the government gives money to religious institutions. Yet they, right? Yeah, right. So we have here similar concepts of freedom and values and rights, but they're expressed differently. Why? Well, look into how the United States was founded. The United States was founded because King George put a limit on expression and religion, and what you can say. So the bedrock of the American Declaration of Independence was my in-laws were here, so watching the basketball game. I mean my brother-in-laws, like the Heat were playing the 76ers. So like, what kind of name is 76ers? Philadelphia, 1776, 13 stars. Yeah. No, but they're Argentine. So by us, that's why individual freedoms are held very, very precious. In Europe, you have the wars. What happened? Actually, they had to go back to Germany. The incitement of violence by this person. So they calm down. So basically, based on their experience, they create these values. The Torah is very different. Now, the Torah obviously have values. And in this course, we want to know what's the values that underlines laws, because there are two types of law. I'm skipping ahead. No. There are the two types of law. There's the law between God and man, which usually we refer to as religious law. And then there's the Torah has plenty of law between man and man. So the religious value is not just for between inter-godly relationship. It's also between interpersonal relationship. We want to understand, I thought religion ends where man begins. What is, if someone rear ends me in with their car and they have to pay me back. How is that a religious interaction? That's just societal, right? I mean, that's okay. You got to right the wrong. Oh. We're gonna edit that out also. So the concept. So by the way, guys, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Maybe I should. Better. Yeah, sorry. COVID is so contagious; it goes through because we have so many computers. Yeah, exactly. There you go. So, so the question, what? Independence. Everything. I'm with you. So the lesson today, and in general, we're going to discuss is what does religion have to do with it? I mean, in civil law, you're responsible for your actions, even if they're accidental. Many times I used to tell my students this when I was teaching them. It was an accident. I said, we're not talking about going in jail. No one says you're a bad person. I understand it's an accident. Something spilled, clean it up. Oh, but it was an accident. Okay. You still got to clean it up. That's not religious nature. That's basic decency. So if society can come to an understanding of what's right, decent, expected of a person, where's the religious part of it? You want to tell me, okay, that maybe started out, why do I need God to tell me that if I cause damage or something, whatever it is, I had to pay back? You know what I'm saying? I need God to tell me to pay tefillin. I need God to tell me to keep Shabbos. Where's the Torah? Why is that religious? Where's real religiosity? Okay, so the exercise. We'll start with the exercise. I'm behind in my. Okay. Now, just obviously, if it's stated in the Torah, there are values, right? That goes without saying. If the Torah expressed these values, then obviously those values are there. The question is, what are they? All right, so let's go to exercise number 1, page 2. What's the difference between? I think it was worded a little bit difficult. What's the difference between a coach and a referee?
A coach works with the or goes over different things about the opposing team that they're going to be facing. Where a referee basically is telling all the players you have to follow all the rules.
Good fight,
no
hitting,
clipping,
no hitting long ball, right?
no clipping, no head-to-head tackle, no steering.
Right. Right. So let's first examine secular law, what that's based on, and then we'll look at the difference. All right, guys, online, please, if you have any questions, please interrupt. So after the Declaration of Independence and its successful, and that success, so France got this idea of individual liberty. So if you know your American history, which I'm sure I already and know because you taught history, right?
Yeah.
Right. So there was a book called the Declaration of Rights of Man, drafted by Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès and Marquis de Lafayette, who, if you study the War of Independence, Marquis Lafayette was very influential figure in the army of George Washington. George Washington had a great affection for him, and he was key really to helping the United States. And he wrote this declaration of this treatise together with Thomas Jefferson. If you don't know, he's on the $2 bill. No, sorry, he's on the $2 bill. Yeah. Lincoln's on the 5. Hamilton is on the 10. Jackson's on the 20. Grant is on the 50, and
Benny is on the 100.
And who's on the 2? Thomas Jefferson. I have a $2 bill in my. Unbelievable! Look at this. In the synagogue, they don't believe me. You want me to get a $2 bill from my office?
Get a $2 bill. Let's take a look.
You don't. I could be wrong. Who is on the $2 bill? Thomas Jefferson. No, sorry. I muted my phone. Anyway, so text number 1. I want you to pay attention to the wording here and see if you can really pick out the approach of philosophy, because we're gonna be comparing this one to the other one. And it says like this: liberty consists. This is page number 4. Liberty consists in the freedom to do everything which injures no one else. Hence, the exercise of the natural rights of each man has no limits except those which assure to other members of society the enjoyment of the same rights. These limits can only be determined by law. Law can only prohibit such actions that as are hurtful to society. Nothing may be prevented which is not forbidden by law, and no one may be forced to do anything not provided by law. So, in the words of the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator certain unalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Basically, what they're saying over here is that everyone has the right to pursue and do whatever they want, as long as you don't infringe and hurt another person. Now, the problem is, if you give me unbridled and unyielding rights, and then it gets confusing. So what's the purpose of the law? The purpose of the law is to make sure that my rights and your rights don't hurt each other. But really, as long as I'm not hurting you and you're not hurting me, I can do whatever I want. One at the door. Oh, the front door is open. That was you? Okay, sorry. Right? So what's that saying? The popular saying that your liberty to swing your hand ends where my nose begins. You ever heard of this? Your liberty to swing your hand, you swing your fists, and where my nose begins. Basically, as long as you're not hurting anybody, you can pretty much do whatever you want. That's the philosophy that secular law has. And so what's the purpose of law? The purpose of law is to make sure that my rights are not hurting your rights. That is not the Torah's law. That is not the Torah. The Torah is not just here to maintain public order. The Torah is here to do a lot more. This is why the Torah has in it not just laws about Shabbat, kosher, and tefillin and all that. Pesach, there's more, because Torah is the expectation of a human being is a lot more than just don't hurt the other guy. If I have to tell you not to hurt the other guy, something's wrong with you. You should know for sure you can't hurt. Torah has a lot higher expectations. So we know that everything in the Torah, nothing is by coincidence. Even the placement of topics is not by coincidence. So right after Mount Sinai, the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, which is spelled out in Parshas Yisro, in the book of Genesis, chapter 20. As soon as chapter 20 finishes, chapter 21, what did I say? Nice catch. Exactly. Now we can bring out the pizza. So in Exodus chapter 20, as soon as chapter 20 finishes, in Exodus with the giving of the Torah, Chapter 21 begins not with some lofty or spiritual or religious nature. It talks about very rudimentary civil law. And it starts off, and these are the laws you shall be placed before them. So we see here that there's a religious nature to civil law. The question is why? Why do we need religion to tell us that society has figured out? In fact, most modern day secularists or atheists say you don't need religion. The olden days where people were barbarians, you need a religion to tell you not to hurt another person, not to take another person's property. But now society is pretty much, we figured it out. It took us a while, but we figured it out. Some of us figured it out, right? We need a Richard rules. Could have been the thank you, Mulbrooks. Right? So the question is, what's Jewish about Jewish law? About law. I understand the law, I understand the Jewish, but why do we know that it is, the question is why it is. So look at what Isaac Abarbanel. Abarbanel was around, right? Abarbanel, if you read, I think, is there the, do you see his biography? Yeah, very interesting. If you read his biography, he was in Spain, he lived in Spain, he was the king's treasurer. And the Jews were originally supposed to be expelled, originally in 1391. I forgot which rabbi had the decree pushed off for 100 years, and then 1491 came, and the Barbanel got it pushed off another year. 1492, under pressure from the church, King Ferdinand and Isabel exiled all the Jews, and he actually offered Barbanel to stay, and he even offered him to have a minion. And Barbanel says, "I'm not." So he went to Italy, went to Portugal, and the church came to Portugal, went to Italy, and actually became the treasurer over there. So, but he also wrote, aside from the time of being, working for the king, Department of Finance, he also wrote a commentary on the Chumash, and he wrote some other things. So here you see his commentary on the Mishnah also. He wrote his commentary on the book of Exodus, chapter 21. You see over there the quote, chapter 21, verse 1. He says like this. This is the text number 2, page 5. He says, every human society requires law. Now, what's the advantage of God's laws? Legal system set up by other nations. Why does the verse state that you have to bring the law before them? Telling us that there's something unique about the laws given by God. The reason for this is because although the law of society tells you what you have to do, God tells you what the good thing to do. Not always is the good thing the required thing to do. You see in text number 3, the Torah commands us in Deuteronomy, in Chumash Devarim, that diligently observe God's commandments, and you have to do what you gotta do. You gotta do what you gotta do, and then that's what Hashem commanded. And then do what's right and good in God's eyes. Now, the rabbis analyze this verse because obviously there's two different things in this verse. There's number one, you got to observe what God said, and then there's do what's good in His eyes. It's not the same thing. If it was the same thing, the Torah, many times when we've said this, Torah is not redundant. The Torah doesn't take poetic license. Every word, letter is measured, structured, and the structure of the sentence and the placement of everything. Everything is exact. So there's two different things over here. So Torah law is not just about protecting people's property or protecting people's rights, protecting people from hurting each other. It's not just protection in order that you don't impede or infringe my liberty. It's about doing what's right. And this is where we're going to go back to the example we said before about the difference between a referee and a coach. Does a referee care if a team plays poorly? The referee's job is, since I'm a sports guy, and Ira, you're old enough to remember. The 1919, Chicago White Sox. Who are you rooting for? So, So the 1919 White Sox, they threw the World Series. They purposely lost the World Series. Is that the umpire's problem? Umpires don't care. If you purposely miss a shot, they don't care. Because the referee's job is, as long as you don't step out of bounds or do something wrong, you can play as poorly as you want. That's not their problem. So that's civil law. Civil law pretty much is, as long as you don't step out of this box, you can do whatever you want. Torah law is more of a coach. God wants you to excel. God doesn't just want you to not hurt other people or not step out of the box, so to speak. He's a coach. Like you were saying, he wants to inspire, he wants to motivate you to get the best. So Joe, it says the psychology instructor says, how would you diagnose a patient who sits up and gets up and sits down and up in 1 minute up and down and he's crying, he's screaming, and everything else? How would you diagnose such a person? The student says, a basketball coach. But God is more of a coach. Society, civil law looks at it as secular law is what you have to do or what you can't do. It's really about what you can't do. It's so much what you have to do, you can't do. And God's law is more about what you have to do because it's good. So you can see in the screens, secular law regulates society to keep the rules. God's law wants you to be good. So secular law has to ask the question: are anyone's rights being infringed? That's the law. That's the question they ask themselves. Let's say you want to put 10 commandments in front of City Hall. 10 commandments could be very morally good. Could be in essence good, but if it infringes on someone's rights or it hurts somebody's feelings, it's more of a 2022 example. If it hurts someone's feelings, then we have to remove it because someone's feelings are hurt. I asked one of the people working in the city, so why can't we put up a menorah? They said, because we used to have a menorah and that scene, and someone called and they wanted to put up a satanic scene. Yeah. Whatever. So it's disgusting.
I remember that.
Yeah? Yeah. So I said, I don't care. Whatever. And these people, they do. They go from county municipality, and that's what they do. But that's really how society looks at it. The Torah looks at it as how. I said this line before: are you alive or are you existing? If the society looks at it, if you don't produce, as long as you don't hurt someone else. Let's take a modern example, right? If you want to eat McDonald's every day, wasn't there a documentary, a guy eat McDonald's for 30 days? He had like kidney renal failure or something. Yeah. The guy did a documentary, I want to say like 20 years ago. I didn't watch it. But if a person wants to have McDonald's every day, fast food every day, does society stop him? What's the argument that can society stop him? Because what's going to happen is he's going to become a burden, not really because we care about stopping him, only we care taxpayer money. And now you're infringing on my rights. So in other words, to put it in better words, text number 4, tip for one in Argentina, it's kosher. The text number 4 on page 7. They have sound. So the text number 4, we read a quote from the previous Rebbe. We'll put it very succinctly, put it perfectly. He said there are 2 types of laws. There are laws that create life, and there are laws that are created by life. Human laws are created by life, and therefore they change and vary over time, and they vary from country to country, state to state. God's Torah is divine, and therefore it creates life, and therefore it's eternal. And no matter where you are, it's always the same. So the secular laws are created by life and they regulate society. Jewish laws create life, shape society, and studied by everybody. Right? The Bible is the best-selling book of all time, and not according to the Midrash, the Torah, the existence of the Torah preceded the creation of the world. In fact, everything it says that God looked at the Torah and created the world. You ever heard of the Bible code? They discovered a mathematical impossibility, that they see a pattern in the Torah. Mathematically, it's impossible. It's random. And they look at past events, and you can find these events.
Oh, that's like the DNA.
Yeah, tense. Yeah, I saw that. Right.
If you put it according to the Hebrew alphabet.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I saw that. Yeah, but going back to the Bible code, because more to the point that God looked into the Torah and created the world, it's a mathematical impossibility. So the Torah is something that that creates life, and that's why learning Torah is not just about how to be a religious Jew. When a person goes to yeshiva, they don't mostly learn in yeshiva. You don't learn the religious part of it. You learn civil law in Gemara, because it's living a daily life is not something separate and divorced from a godly life. A daily life is a godly life, because societal law is Jewish law. Okay, so let's get into Jewish law, right? When is doing the right thing an obligation? Again, as we said before, societal law doesn't necessarily legislate the right thing. So we're going to have four cases. Okay, I'm going to go through them quickly. Let's call it. We're going to go through it quickly, and therefore, so try to keep up. All right, if I'm going too quick, slow me down. Case study number A. Case study number A is we have an immigrant who bought himself a property in San Francisco, and it wasn't a very expensive neighborhood. It came this guy Charlie Crocker, I think his name is. Yes, Charles Crocker. Yeah, this is text number 8, and look, and you can see the picture. I think the picture, page to page. There you go. So you can see you can reference it. And he bought the house, and the general bought the house, and he wanted this immigrant from Japan. Is that what it is? Sorry. It wanted him to sell, and he didn't sell. So what do you do? He put up a 40-foot fence. Keep in mind, this is 1800s, so no electricity. So everything is sun. It's called a spite fence. You put it up to spite it. So basically, it blocked out his cool air. It blocked out his sun. Question: should Charles Crocker's fence be legally allowed to stand? Let's say you. We'll start with Ira.
No. First off, in today's society, we have height limits on fences and hedges and things throughout. That's today's society.
This is a spite. But this is San Francisco without.
Did it go over?
No. Look at this. No, he built it on his own property. Look at the picture. What do you say? Legally, according to American law. Put away your yarmulke for a second. According to American law, is we allowed to stand?
Probably no,
Why?
because he's not allowing him to have his pursuit of happiness.
Interesting. He's infringing on his right to happiness.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing,
but looking at it legally, that the fence is doing harm to the person that it's.
Like he said, infringing. Okay.
Right.
Case study B. Rachel has flowers. One day, her neighbor Joe builds a fence, and the fence doesn't allow the sunlight. So she asks him. He asks why you have the fence. So why? To protect against cats. So listen, I'll replace the fence at my expense. Rachel tells the show, the clear fence. This way the sunlight can get through. You still have your protection from the birds, the cats, whatever it is. And Joe says no. Why? Doesn't provide a reason. Question: should Joe be allowed to? Required to allow Rachel to fix the fence? I don't think it is. Case study number B. Esther, you're very quiet.
I should probably not there. I think no, Joe doesn't have to allow Rachel to change the fence.
Okay, you concur, Ira? Since you two are the vocal ones,
Yeah,
you concur.
not.
Okay, number C. Obviously, yeah. Number C. Michael moves to a new house before setting up his own Wi-Fi connection. Realizes his neighbor has an open network. Doesn't lock his network. Can Michael use his neighbor's Wi-Fi without his knowledge?
No.
No.
Ellen says no. Ira?
Well, I mean, I guess if he doesn't password protect it.
He's almost like
I don't
inviting
know.
someone to use it.
Right, but no, it would not be the right thing.
And he's the neighbor is paying for the Wi-Fi probably. If he was foolish enough not to secure it, that's the neighbor's fault. But so you don't have a right to use it. And that illegal. You're stealing that frequency. That
Okay, case number D. Can you park in someone's driveway? They're not there. They're not using the driveway. They go on vacation. Can you park in their driveway?
I would say no. That's well, yeah, no.
Or obviously, he doesn't have permission. Kevin.
I would say no.
You say no.
No.
Okay. So these four cases really are discussing the question of rights versus the right thing.
Correct.
Right? So there's the right to do something. Just because you have the right to do something. I once heard a comedian say, just because you could go skydiving doesn't mean it's a smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. Right. I once heard a line in a kid's movie says, what about my right to remain silent? Says, you have the right to remain silent, but you lack is the capacity. Right? So in the United States, we're very into our rights. Just because you have the right to do something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So let's go back to address this issue. Let's go back to the broader discussion on the purpose why law is here. All right, we're going to play a lesson video. I hope that we don't have sound issues. Known to
Me
happen
too.
before.
If God created the universe in 6 days, it certainly did not take 40 days for God to hand Moses 2 stone tablets. So what was Moses doing up there all that time? He was internalizing a vast body of instruction to transmit to his people. So once the smoke and sounds of Sinai subsided, Moses began to teach, and the Jews were most surprised. They'd expected Moses to begin with a detailed series of highly spiritual rituals or meditations, matters that Moses had to go up to heaven to receive. Instead, Moses first launched into topics far closer to earth than to heaven. He rolled out a unique civil system with requirements unlike any other. Here are a handful of surprising examples. The finder of a lost item must proactively collect or secure the item, and then preserve it while actively seeking its rightful owner. Beyond banning defamation, the Torah even forbids gossip among friends. It requires an individual not only to rescue those being harmed, but to act preemptively. It makes it illegal to look the other way when a fellow traveler is hopelessly stuck along the roadside. It mandates respect for the elderly. It criminalizes the malicious delivery of bad advice. It illegalizes the verbal abuse of individuals whose disabilities prevent them from recognizing the abuse. But surely, the Jews challenged Moses. God prefers spiritual worship instead of looking out for stranded traders and fallen bracelets. Ah, replied Moses, I will soon instruct you in Judaism's rituals and festivals, but you must know that these civil laws are also spiritual. You see, God's goal is not for you to transcend the earth, but to change it and make it more heavenly. You will notice that the Torah's legislation is more than a guide to protecting rights and maintaining social order. No, these laws include mechanisms for molding a righteous civilization. From now on, each of you is legally obligated to do the right thing for those around you, and to proactively extend yourself in the pursuit of good and righteous conduct. With that, Moses and the Jews launched into a spirited study of Jewish civil practice and its aspirations of a righteous society, a study that flourishes until today.
Okay, we bought a new computer for the show. The show invested like a good $700-800 on this new mini computer. So the graphics are a lot better. I think
And the sound was good.
the sound was good.
Yes.
Well, obviously, okay. But the picture was terrible.
No, the picture was good. It was much better than the last course.
Okay. All right. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly how to do it because we want to be able to see it over here, but also want to be able to, for recording purposes. So you can see me as well. All right. So we have over here. So in figure 1.1 on page 12, what we have over here is to apply it in modern terms, right? You can't stand by to the Good Samaritan. There's a Good Samaritan Law. But the Good Samaritan is if you're going by and you see someone in a burning building, or in a car, or somebody collapsed on the floor, and you have an obligation to help them. No, answer is no. Unless you're a trained professional, you don't. No, the whole point of the Good Samaritan Law is to protect somebody who wants to help. So, for example, if you know, many times if you do CPR correctly, you're going to end up cracking people's ribs.
Mhm.
The Good Samaritan Law is to protect a guy who might be hesitant to administer CPR because he might get sued for cracking the guy's ribs. But the obligation to help is not there. You don't have to help. The fact that the Good Samaritan Law had to be implemented itself is a marker on society. That we think that a person receiving help could later sue the person who helped them. The Torah tells us, you see someone in risk, you have to help them. Number two, see someone pulled over on the side of the road, you have to help them. You can't just, let me tell you something. I've been on the side of the road. And I remember one time Mendy on a road trip, he threw up on the New York State Thruway. and it's and we had to we went on the road trips. So we had clothing, and we had things. He pulled over the side of the road. We had to take off his pants. He was covered in vomit. And there are a lot of people driving there. New York State Thruway is a busy road. We must have 10, 15 cars stopped. Only Jewish people stopped for us. Right.
Yeah, I had an
You see-
accident. I had an accident. in Cleveland.
Where's that?
8.6,
Oh, the Golden Glades.
Yeah.
I didn't know it's called the Cloverleaf. All right. Right,
Back in
exactly.
1990.
Right.
It was an accident. And four people pulled over. And they saw me wearing a yarmulke. Everything all right? Everything's fine. Police. Everything's gonna be okay.
Right. Yeah, I'm saying it's why, because this is taught. So in secular society, if you're a good person, you decide to do it. The Torah says no. See someone who needs help, you help them. If you saw them, that means you're probably in position to help them. Now, aside from defamation, and spreading false news about people, you can't spread bad news about people, and it's true. You can't gossip. Sorry, guys. All right, guys, class is over. I can't do this. So there are, so like I said, there are concepts of duty to help, duty to rescue. But again, those are mostly if a person is a trained professional. The obligation to do something good, to help somebody, that's absent from secular society. Secular society does not include. It doesn't have it. It's not premised on compassion and goodness, like Abba Benel said. It's dependent on individual rights. So you can't force me to do something I don't want to do. So therefore, even if a person is suffering, whatever it is, then we don't force somebody. Going back to text number 3, what Abba Benel said, you observe God's commandments, right? That's what you got to do, right? You can't hurt somebody. But then it said, remember we said the verse is split into 2. Then he said you have to do what's good and right in God's eyes. That's the good part. That's the right thing. And Nachmanides expands on it. Well, Nachmanides really preceded the Abba Benel. Nachmanides was from 1200s. Abba Benel was from the 1400s. He says, long text number 5, page 13. Our sages expounded on the verse and explains the law like this: go beyond the letter of the law. In other words, the Torah first exhorts us to observe God's commandments. That's what you got to do. You have to be a law-abiding citizen. And then it says you got to do what's right and good, even when not explicitly commanded to do so, because God cherishes good and good and proper conduct. And now you're going to ask, but the Torah only gives us a few examples. What about all those other things? So Nachmanides says you can't expect the Torah to state every single scenario. It's impossible. So Torah gives us just a framework. It gives us just multiple examples: gossip, revenge. Don't stand by your neighbor's hurt. Don't curse that person. Stand in the presence of good of the age. Torah then concludes with a generalized command to do what's right and good, meaning to go beyond the letter of the law. So what do we have here? So we have the body of all God's commandments. The body of all God's commandments is this is the framework. This is how you have to live. Eat this. Okay, that's more religious. Okay, but let's say eat this, eat that. You're allowed to do this. You're allowed to do that. You cause damage, you have to pay back, right? I mean, you loan money, you can't charge interest. But then there's the soul law. Why is God giving you those laws? If God hadn't told us to pay back loans, you think we wouldn't figure it out on our own? Most probably. The Gemara talks about if God didn't tell us about being modest, we could have learned modesty from a cat. Cat does his business. We could have learned hard work from an ant. The Gemara goes through various different creatures where basically we could have figured it out on our own. At some point, we didn't invent the wheel. Exactly.
Cryptocurrency. This wheel and let it be like something that says, it isn't gonna work.
Yeah, failure for sure, right? So, just like a human being is made up of body and soul. So the body is the legislative, what you can do. But the spirit, what does Hashem want? Hashem communicates to you that the idea is that you should be a good person. Now, a good person doesn't only mean you're a law-abiding citizen. That means you haven't gone to jail. The guy says, "Are you a good person?" Yeah, I pay my taxes. I don't steal. That's a good person. The person hasn't violated any law. It's not a good person. A good person is somebody who does beyond what he's supposed to. And
Where it says that Noah,
yeah,
I guess this time, if we're
very for society, right? So now the Torah, interesting by the way, or Pirkei Avos, which we're going to learn this. It makes a comparison. Now we all know, well, we should know, but the city of Sodom, right? The city of Sodom was a very bad place. It wasn't just, it was a metropolis that God destroyed. This is in the book of Genesis. I get the book right this time. God destroys. Why? Because they were exceedingly evil. The Torah doesn't actually say what they did wrong. It just says they were exceedingly evil. We have different hints about what they did wrong. But what we know is this: that the character of Sodom is the very opposite extreme of how the Torah wants us to behave. And the worst thing you can do is like say you're acting like a citizen of Sodom. In fact, according to halacha, if a person is acting that way within his law legally, but he's acting evil just for no reason, that's what Sodom was. Sodom were people acting evil just because they were evil. It wasn't bad, So, for example, sometimes you got to do a bad thing, but for a good reason. Someone breaks into your house in the middle of the night, and you defend, and you hurt the guy, and you defending yourself. You did a bad thing. You hurt another person. But you did it for a good reason. But sometimes you have to do a bad thing. But Sodom, they're doing bad things for no reason, which is epitome of evil. So you see in text number 6, the Gemara says that if we see that a person is acting in the character of Sodom, we can compel a person not to act that way. What does it mean? What is the character of Sodom? Remember, the Torah didn't tell us what they did wrong. So interesting, in the 6th chapter of Pirkei Avos, the 5th chapter of Pirkei Avos goes through a bunch of lists, different character traits and different things. 6th chapter also, and there in chapter 5, paragraph 10, it goes through. If a person acts like this way, he's righteous. If a person acts like this way, he's evil. Then it says the person who says what's mine is mine, and what's yours is an average guy. And another person says, not average, forget about average. This is the character of the people of Sodom. Now, there's a very big difference between average and being Sodom. Mm-hmm. How could they have such divergent opinions? One is not extreme, but one is you're a regular guy, and one is you're a very bad guy. So it's interesting so what is it? So look at text number 7b. So the Meiri says like this: when is saying what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours bad, and when is it okay? He says it's very interesting. He explains. He says, because he explains that what you see on the screen, they're both right. They're just talking about two different situations. Sometimes mine is okay, and sometimes mine is mine, yours is yours, is Sodom-like character. So he says like this: if someone's going to use something that belongs to you, and you will not incur any loss, any financial loss or any personal expense, and you say no anyway, just to say no, for what reason? That's Sodom. Here the person's gaining, and you're not losing anything. So why are you saying no? For what reason? Now, if the person using your thing is going to cause you slight, well, let's call it slight, inconvenience or loss, you're an average guy. An average guy, because you don't want to, you're not forced to go out of your way. You're not forced to, incur any loss. No, you're not a nice guy. You're an okay guy, an average guy, right? So, but what do we see from here? What does it mean to be? What does it mean to be a Sodom character, an average character? Sodom character is that he doesn't, even though it doesn't hurt him in any way, help another person, he doesn't want to benefit that person. That's evil. Let's talk. Let's get biblical for a second. Who is the arch enemy of the Jewish people in the book of Exodus? The book of Exodus, Amalek, not the Egyptians. We were in Egypt, we're in slavery in Egyptians for hundreds of years. We don't find any hatred to the Egyptians. Not only that, it says if an Egyptian wants to convert, 3 generations after the Exodus, you have to allow them to come in, and we can't persecute them, and we have to be thankful because we did live in their country. We're not commanded to hate the Egyptians. We're not commanded to eradicate the Egyptians, even though they didn't treat us nicely. Amalek were commanded to eradicate. Why? They picked one fight. Although the answer is because although the reason was a false reason, but it wasn't based on the reason why the Egyptians enslaved the Jewish people was based on a logical reason, because they doubted the sincerity of the Jews' citizenship. Pharaoh did. Okay, it was false and it was unbased because he had no reason to, but whatever, he did. And he said, lest a foreign army comes and the Jews, instead of choosing to be Egyptians, they'll choose the out, right? So maybe you want to say the fear was unfounded, but at least you can explain why that animosity was there. But Amalek came to attack the Jewish people. Why? They weren't passing near their country. They weren't taking over the country for no reason. They had nothing to do with them. They were coming out of Egypt, going to Israel. Here's Amalek. They came north to attack them. For what reason? Just because they hated them. That has to go. Same thing, Sodom. You have a chance to help another person at zero expense to you. That's a bad character. Now, a good guy would help somebody. So an average guy won't do a favor at a cost. We can't compel somebody to incur a loss of time or loss of finance, whatever it is. But if someone is acting just bad for no reason, then we can tell them, you don't have the right to act that way. And look at the example the Gemara gives, the Maimonides gives based on the Gemara. Text number 8. Okay, text number 8 tells a very interesting story. Let's say, for example, you have this guy, right? And he has his window over here. There's his window over here for light. And this guy wants to build a wall. Well, let's say he wants to build a second story. And the second story is going to block the light. So we'll call this guy Ruvain. Ruvain goes to Shimon and says, listen, I understand it's going to block your light. So what I'll do is, I'll build you, I guess he has a second story also. I'll build you a wall. I'll build you a window here. So you still get light. I'll build you a new hole, right? And, it's not going to be dirt. You won't have to move out of your house. Boom. Whatever it is, right? Yeah. So what if Shimon says, no? I don't want. Allah says to Shimon, too bad. What was that? So the halacha says to Shimon, too bad. If it's not going to cause you any loss of any inconvenience, you don't have to move out, right? And it's not causing any loss of money because he's paying for it. And he can gain because he wants a second story. And you still have your sunlight. We don't care it's your property. We don't care you have rights. You're doing the wrong thing. And we can legislate bad behavior. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, right. I mean, bad behavior.
Yes. You're cutting in and out there. I can't hear.
Well, Ira, speak louder, huh?
Oh. I said,
You think if this case was brought to court, Ruvain wants to build a wall blocking Shimon's light, and Shimon and he's offering to let me tell you what happened. We live in a different here in Florida. But let me tell you something that happens in New York all the time. And I know many neighbors became enemies because of this. So the houses in New York are either touching or very close to each other. So let's say many times people in New York they want to raise up your house. But many times when you raise up your house, you have to go and you have to secure the foundation. You're adding another floor, something else. So you have to get permission from your neighbor. And sometimes they go and say, listen, we'll secure you, we'll put pins in your foundation, make sure nothing happens. And the neighbor says no. And as long as the neighbor says no, the guy can't, and he says, listen, you're going to damage my foundation, even though he offers to, you can't do it. Yeah, but he's offering to, also to shore up, yeah. So I don't think in American law we can force Shimon to allow Reuben to close up that hole and build another one. I know a story. There's a guy in the old city of Jerusalem. He used to make a lot of money because his house was overlooking the old city. And he used to invite people, very nice guy, he used to invite people for Shabbat meals, but he used to rent out his rooftop for people to do. And Eish HaTorah came and bought the land right in front, and they put up this, we'll see when they go to Israel, they put up this monstrosity of a building. And I think he took them to court, and he lost. He lost because that's not a problem that you used to have. You used to have it, now you don't have it.
Now, yeah, because it is property go down.
For sure.
So that's illegal.
No, it's not. Because you bought something based on the you can see the sea. Let's say there are two lots, and you bought the lot across the street from the sea, and I come and buy the lot in front of the sea. I can't build my house because you bought the lot, there was no house there. Your expectation. Right?
If it values.
Well, of course,
And
you can't see the western wall anymore. Still very close, but you can't see the wall anymore.
Up and down. Years ago, when they started putting in all of these glass buildings.
Yeah. Right. Reflective heat, yeah.
I don't remember what happened in that case.
I'd be interested to know Okay, so let's move on. We're not even close to the. This is interesting stuff, though. I mean, this is really down to earth. So, case A, the guy built a 40-foot fence. Do you think halacha, Jewish law, would tell him you have to remove the fence, or he's allowed to keep the fence up? The spite fence. Remember the guy built a 40-foot fence?
Right.
Ellen, what do you say? Could halacha tell
Well,
him that this Crocker guy is has to take it down, or is he within his rights to leave it up?
obviously he's within his rights to leave it up if that's what.
According to Jewish law, though, what do you say? Was it serving any purpose to this Crocker fellow?
No.
It was done just in spite. So actually,
Right.
according to the Jewish law, you would have to take it down. Not only that, ever since that case, many states have passed something called the spite fence law, that you're not allowed to do something on your own property just to damage your neighbor when it has no control purpose. I mean, different laws have it's according to Jewish law, it have to come down because you're not getting anything from a 40-foot fence. You're just trying to hurt the other guy.
Right.
Second one. Also, with the clear fence, Joe wants protection from the cat, whatever it is. Do you care if the fence is transparent or not? So you want a fence, you get your fence. She gets her flowers, you get your fence. Why say no? So, based on the Torah's, what God says, you shall do what's right and righteous. We can legislate morality. If it's a no cost to you and the other person can gain. So again, it goes back to the question: rights versus what's right. That's really the balance. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Let's go another case. Interesting case. Let's say you're rich. Let's say a lot, very rich, right? To use Tevi as example, may God strike me with that curse, and may I never recover. And you have a lot of real estate, right? You have so much real estate, you have an apartment empty, and no one's living there. Afterwards, you find out that some poor guy's been living there, not damaging the place. He's been living there, right? Now, the question is, can you go collect rent past rent? Look, the Gemara talks about this. Text number 9. So now, if one lives in a fellow's yard and house, when the Gemara says yard, it's interchangeable with house. Okay? A yard means a yard with the house. Without the latter's knowledge, does he have to pay rent or not? The question in regard to the yard is not to a yard that is not on the market for rent. Why? Because if the house is in the market for rent, if I think it's on the market, then you approach the house. Oh, it's occupied. You're not going to put it in offer, right? So the house is not on the market. So I'm not expecting income or expecting to generate income. Can the squatters say to the owner, did it cause any loss to you? And obviously, again, we're not talking about he's damaging the place. He's just living there. Or perhaps the owner can say, listen, you were going to have to pay rent. He didn't pay rent. So whatever rent you would have had paid, pay me. What do you think the law is? We're a panel of judges. Ellen, Ira, and Michael J. Everyone else is so quiet. Yeah. What do you say? Give an opinion. Your opinion doesn't make a difference.
Well, if it was my personal property, I wouldn't want somebody squatting there. Whether they're nice and they're keeping it clean.
Okay, hold on. Whoa, no. Okay, no, we're going to talk about that in a second. Going forward, the question here in text number 9 is the past. So you say you can't collect the rent. And you say for past rent.
He discovered 3 days ago. He can't. I don't think you can ask him for that. You can only ask him ask for the rent from the time he discovered he was there.
Okay, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about past. Past. He finds out that this guy's been living in his house, in his property, the whole 2021. No past friends.
No past.
Alan, what do you say?
Yes, pay rent.
Okay, right. Alan's in New York landlord. Oh. Idiot, pay rent on my property or you're out of here. Understand?
That's right. I don't have that horrible an accent. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it seems like it's very similar to the did I skip the whole slide? I think I skipped the whole slide. I'm sorry. I discussed this. Okay. In some secular societies, I said the spike fence is illegal. I mentioned that some states had passed that, but in a secular society, we cannot force Joe to change his because we're right. Here we go. Spotter's right. Here we go. So this is wrong. The house is not in the market. It's a win. It's a win and no loss situation. The owner doesn't incur loss. Why doesn't he incur loss? Because he wasn't expecting to get revenue from that apartment anyway. Therefore, he never thought that it was on the market. So he never incurred loss. Now again, important, if the house was on the market and he didn't rent it, he could say, listen, you caused me loss because people thought it was occupied. So the house is not on the market.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the ad said, and all this. Was sold with the spotted
The basement. And in New York, when people buy real estate buildings, so there's some apartments, the rent control goes based on the person. So they have to make a disclosure how many rent control apartments are in the city, are in that building. Because you can buy a building thinking, okay, there's 25 apartments, I'm gonna make great revenue, and you find out that right? So you ain't even covering your mortgage. It's a problem. So the answer to the question is that the squatter does not have to pay back rent because the house wasn't on the market. The owner incurred no loss. So here we have the owner has no loss. The squatter benefits. Now the question is, can he stay? And most people say no. Because I have a right. I have a right to say that you can't be on my property. See text number 10. Text says we only compel the property owner not to conduct himself like inhabitants of Sodom regarding the past. At the same time, it is clear the property owner has the right to protest the squatter's presence and need not permit the squatter to remain on his property, because now we obviously, and you see over here, why? Why is that? Because interesting, because text number 11, I'll say it outside and then we'll read it inside. Text number 11, this is Rabbi from the 1800s, says very interesting. Where is ownership? Ownership is in your head, right? As long as the owner didn't know the guy was there, it was never a compromise of his ownership on that apartment. Right? He thought he owned it. If he allows this guy to stay here, now there's an indentation, so cutting away of his ownership on the apartment. It means his ownership has been compromised. So now the guy he can come and say, what do you mean I can't be here? You knew I was here and you didn't stop me. Which means maybe he can say that you gave it to me as a gift. Maybe he can say, I bought from you. I don't know, whatever, right? Because the owner has established knowledge of the guy and hasn't kicked him out. No, that's why the owner has the right to kick him out.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Look at text number 11. So in text number 11, this is what he's saying. He's saying, in my opinion, the reason Tosfos rules the property owner can actively be compelled to allow a squatter be actively compelled to allow a squatter on his property is because the compulsion in such an instant would be forcibly negation of the property owner's control of his own property. Most people would object to this. The failure of an individual to consent to something that most people would object to cannot be considered Sodom-like conduct. Remember, Sodom-like conduct is when the person is benefited and no loss to yourself. But here, there is loss. Squatter's presence on the property without the owner's knowledge, and that doesn't negate the owner's control, because the owner retains the right to evict. But once he allows the guy to be there, then getting him out is a lot harder. That's why he's allowed to he's allowed to evict him. All right, let's go to case C and D. Case C and D was the Wi-Fi and the parking space, which I think is a lot more applicable to modern times, only because I think it's more common, right? Talking about fences, by the way, my old house, I had a neighbor that was, remember that?
Oh.
She was such a machshef. And the hurricane, what was the last hurricane we had? That was Michael's or I forgot what it was. Came and ripped down the fence between our properties. She got a violation, something. She did final part. What she comes to me, wants me to co-pay for her fence. Actually, she sent a neighbor to ask. So all these years she's been driving me crazy, calling security on me, trying to get me in trouble with the city. Now she has the chutzpah to come and ask me that I should go pay for her fence, because you know how it goes, right? Every neighbor has their own fence. I said, sorry, Charlie. Right. I said, you know, when you no, right, yeah, no, it is her fence, but she wanted me to co-pay. I know I did it. She was asking me to be nice. I said, I had 10 years to be nice. All of a sudden, now you want money. Now I said, sorry, it's okay. I don't care. Her pool was locked up. I didn't care. Let's go C and D, right?
Mhm.
It's getting late. One was done. The C and D was the Wi-Fi. Are you allowed to use the Wi-Fi? Now, in the beginning, in the 90s, when we were charged for, in the early 2000s, we were charged for downloads. Then it's not even a question, because you're using the person's Wi-Fi, or I don't know, what was their Wi-Fi back then? You're definitely incurring loss because the guy has to pay. Well, okay, that's the early 2000s, whatever it is. So let's say when they were charging for, but let's go with when they were charging for a gigabyte, whatever it is, or you only had a limit how much you can download, then definitely incurring loss. Or let's say there's a limit up to a certain amount. Afterward, they slow you down, then definitely there's loss. But what happens in a case where there's no limit?
Well, you're still cheating the company, the
Why?
Wi-Fi provider, because the other guy is paying and you're not paying, and that's how that Wi-Fi provider is that's his business.
One thing, if you come to my house, can you use my Wi-Fi?
No, but this wasn't somebody coming to your house and using your Wi-Fi. This was you using your neighbor's Wi-Fi instead of signing up for Wi-Fi.
But Xfinity is giving Mordechai Druzy Wi-Fi, not Irish Schrager. Do I have permission to share? I mean, we're getting into a different purview here. Huh? Never been next door. My in-laws want to move next door. I'm going to move to the edge of a cliff, which is, precipice one side, precipice on the other side, and only one place for. I'm gonna move my house to Mount Doom. Just what's that? What's that from Dr. Seuss? So isn't that something? So, Ellen, you raise a good point to actually then think about. Are you allowed to do it legally according to the right? Putting that aside, because question is, can you use it? Well, it would seem if you're not causing damage, and the guy, and maybe you can even argue the guy doesn't even mind he's using it. He didn't bother to put a password.
Right?
Right.
Or he doesn't
Or-
care. He doesn't care if he uses it, but you're cheating the company out of the revenue.
Right. But
The company,
The cable company, whoever provides the Wi-Fi.
no, but Ellen's saying that the cable company. But let me ask you. Well, let me ask you a question though. Let me ask you a question. Is it okay to share your Netflix password?
doesn't. The blind.
No. What do you mean? Netflix allows for multiple users in one household.
It does. In one house, which is one location.
You can watch that. You can watch Netflix wherever you want. So you're making Ellen's point. No, but now you're making Ellen's point. Ellen's point, yeah. But you have to buy internet connection from somewhere. Well, you're using this guy's internet. If not for this guy having internet, you'd have to pay for it. Do you not? And what do you know?
Yes.
Different because because that guy who owned the real estate wasn't renting out the property. Yeah. So it wasn't. I'm saying it wasn't. No, but he wasn't. There was never an expectation of revenue. The cable company has an expectation of revenue. But they're now you see. Well, let's clarify one thing. As long as house A that has the Wi-Fi, as long as house B is not slowing down the house A, okay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. By the way, now you see what yeshiva looks like. You learn Gemara. This is kind of the way. No, really. It's taking a case. No, I'm saying, but this is what it is. So you're looking at it as you're looking potential revenue is not revenue. Ellen's looking at it as that this guy's a potential company, a customer, and because he's using his neighbor's Wi-Fi, he's losing. The company's losing potential revenue. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gotten. Right. So the question is right now. To start another question, and we're getting on tangent. It's really after 9 o'clock. We had technical. The question is, can a company force or tell a customer you must put a password on your phone, on your Wi-Fi, to stop people from using the Wi-Fi?
What they can do is they not give that.
Okay. So I'm saying, but you just said, so you're saying a company can force to put a password. No, but you're saying that that's. I'm approaching it as, can they force you in order to stop you from sharing?
with the wife. House A, they give permission to house B to share.
No, well, obviously, we're obviously talking about didn't get permission. We get permission, then something else. We're talking about. So we're right. Okay, let's go, guys. Come on. It's regular stuff. Next, can Sarah park your car in the driveway? The answer is yes. I mean, unless you want to argue that maybe there will be some minor detriment to the driveway, or you can say, but maybe Sarah's car leaks oil, but let's say it doesn't leak oil. Okay, if Sarah's car is not causing any loss, then the house looks occupied. But let's say guy lives in a good neighborhood. Okay, so in American law, obviously he didn't ask. In American law, by the way, if you go into someone's property, even by mistake, it's trespassing. In American law, if you go into someone else's property, even according to American law, you don't have to demark your property limits. And yet, a person violates trespassing, even if they don't knowingly trespass, and even though your property line is not clearly marked. Question. We're not talking about prosecution. Officially, they've trespassed. So we're not talking about American law. So interesting though, we see over here that Jewish law approaches it very different, extremely differently. How how Jewish law. So in secular law, you can say, I have a right to stop you from parking my driveway. It's not going to cause you any loss. Doesn't make a difference. It's my right. It's my right. Don't use my Wi-Fi. You're paying for it anyway. What do you care? Now, interesting, by the way, we're not going to touch on this appendix, but it's a very interesting appendix, which this law in Appendix B is applied today in tremendous ways. You should know. The law is the law in Appendix B. You can look at it on page 31. That it's right of first refusal. That if I have a property and my neighbor's selling, I have a right to buy the property first. Not only have the right to buy the property first, if my neighbor sells it to someone else, I have the right to force the buyer to give it to me. And obviously, I have to compensate him. Force him. Why? Because I would much rather have two properties closer together. I mean, especially in the Torah, it's more not so much property with homes, property with fields. I'd rather have field, right? Instead of having fields all over the place. We can force that. We see this one more case over here. We see another interesting case is that Rabbah hired these guys to move a barrel of wine and they dropped it. So what did Rabbah do? He grabbed their cloak, and Rabbah says, give them back their cloak. Is that the law? This is text number 12. Is that the law? He said, yeah. In order they should follow the path of good people. So he gave them back the cloak. Then the workers came over to him and said, we worked for you the whole day. We're hungry. We need money for food. Pay for food. Get out of here. You had a job to do, and you messed up the job. You smashed my barrel of wine. So Rav says, pay them. Pay them? So he says, yep. He says that's what it means when you should do. You should work in the way of the righteous. Again, but this is Torah's. This is now. By the way, Rabbah could turn around and sue them for negligence. Sue them for negligence. The fact of the matter is, they work for you, and your responsibility is to feed them. I guess under that agreement. So, right. So now, so a good righteous person means that yes, it's going to cause you some kind of loss, but you do why? Because it's a right thing to do. It's a good thing to do, proper thing to do. So Rav is telling Rabbah that for a person like him, who's a great person, it's not just enough for you to do the legal thing. You also have to do what's morally right. There's another Oh, you can go to Appendix C, which has a whole breakdown of Rashi. It's very easy. It's very nice and makes it easy to understand because it breaks it down. All right, let's end off with tonight. So we basically have three different types of people. Number one, you got what you got to do, right? Obligations that you have to do. That's not up to you. You can't choose. And that's sort of Jewish law and secular law are some. Then you have what is to do the right thing because you help another person and it has at no expense to you. Here's where American law and secular law differ, because we can force someone to do that according to Jewish law. The secular law, you can't force someone to be a good person. Just like the comedian said, you can't fix stupid. Right? You can't legislate morality. I often bring up this case because it really stuck in my head. Tell me if you remember this, because I said this before. Remember that story I told about Hurricane Sandy, the guy who didn't let the people in who were drowning to his house? You remember the story I told you? You guys are great. I tell these stories. You guys remember. So there's a woman who worked as a nurse. Quickly, the woman who worked as a nurse, and she had to go to the hospital. She had 2 kids, and she lived by the water. And a superstorm Sandy, and the car was overwhelmed by waves, and she had to get out of the car with her kids, and she came to her house. She knocked on the door. The guy didn't open the door. She tried to smash the window. Didn't work, and she couldn't hold on to her kids, and her kids drowned, and she survived. I think she held on to the pole. So I went over to the guy and said, "Why don't you open the door?" She said, "I have no obligation to open the door. She's responsible for being outside." And they tried to find something to prosecute him, but they couldn't. Why? Because he had the obligation to open the door. You can't. With the American law or secular law doesn't legislate morality. Nothing you can do about it. Or what about the story in Florida where these kids watch this guy die, drown, and they're actually taking video of it. They try to find a way to prosecute the kids. I mean, the kids 17, 18 years old. You couldn't. You can't. You can't legislate morality. I mean, these are only 2 stories that stick in my head, but there are many stories. Torah says, so we learned that you can't stand by us someone's drowning, right? Torah says you have the obligation to bring them in. Now, the other thing is if doing the right thing is going to incur loss. Loss could be time, loss could be money. We can't legislate it. We can't force it according to Jewish law, but it's encouraged. Torah's way of saying is better do it, or else. We're always times we're going to need to be on the other end. All right.
We heard about that. It was in Broward County. I can't remember. On Rye. He was driving his car lake, and who was 18, walking with his mother, and he jumped into the lake, and they both drowned.
Yeah, there's been stories like that. All right, so the exercise for today, page 27, we identify 3 degrees of expression of basic Jewish principle. That's right. Now you got to identify in your life how you can be better. Next week is going to be very interesting. Next week, let's say a guy did something wrong. He says, "I'm sorry." How far does "I'm sorry" go? He repents. He feels bad. He did something wrong and he owns up to it. But now, how does that work with making it right? just don't, like my teacher used to say, just don't do it again. Our key points.
Lesson 1. Beyond Good Neighbors. 1. All legal systems are shaped by their underlying values, but this is especially true of Jewish law. 2. While secular law views its purpose as maintaining social order by protecting individual rights, Jewish law sees its purpose as shaping society by guiding individuals to do what is right and upstanding in God's eyes. 3. Jewish law forbids spiteful conduct. Spite fences are forbidden, and people can be compelled to allow changes to their property that benefit others and come at no personal cost. 4. Certain unauthorized uses of other people's property that cause no harm to the owners are permitted by Jewish law. However, the owner generally retains the right to object. 5. When doing the right thing in favor of a fellow entails a degree of personal expense or loss, Jewish law declines to mandate it, but nevertheless encourages people to adopt this praiseworthy approach.
All right, guys, sorry for the technical, I'm trying to find a way that works for everybody. Next week is gonna be good stuff. And thank you so much for joining. Please share with your friends. Let's get a larger crowd, guys. All the best.
Okay. Thank you,
All right.
Rabbi. Night.
Good night.